Okay, if we want to talk about what you put together to do a very ideal, proper, professional restoration project, there are three types of evidence that you want to rely on. But that said, no two restorations of museum properties are alike. That's why you can't find a book that says how to restore a house. Maybe you have that for private houses, but never for museum houses because everyone is very different. But you still have to rely on some evidence for what you're doing. So at Poplar Forest, there are three basic types of evidence. One is archival sources, documents, letters. That's what most people think about when you talk about documentation and history. Then there are physical sources. That's where you come into the investigation, the physical investigation. Then the third is what we might call prototypical evidence, meaning what did Jefferson do before Poplar Forest? What did he do after Poplar Forest? Which of his workers worked on any of the three sites? And that gives you very unusual kind of evidence because we're dealing with Thomas Jefferson, who had a continuity through all of his projects for his whole life using some of the same workers. So if we want to talk about the archival evidence, here's a very detailed letter that Jefferson's writing from the White House to the workers way out here on the edge of things. Later on, 1819, this is a very detailed letter from John Hemmings, who is the enslaved master craftsman who does all the finish work for Poplar Forest, and we'll talk about him later, but he is sending letters to Jefferson, who might be at Monticello. Jefferson is writing letters to Hemmings, who is at Poplar Forest working with his crew. So that is a very rare occurrence. And again, because we're dealing with Jefferson, there is a lot of different types of evidence. But for somebody who wrote down more than anybody else in his generation, there are still things that are a little mysterious and you have to figure out, especially when you're talking about Jefferson, the private person. And that's what Poplar Forest is all about, privacy, retreat. And so down here are some examples of physical evidence. So this is a drawing of one of the brick walls in the house, and if you know how to do it, you can read physical evidence like you would read a document. You can read all about ghost marks, where something was and then later it's gone. You can read how things are attached to the walls. You can see how big things were, pieces of trim. You can see how they finished the wall with plaster. You can analyze nails and date them. You can analyze the saw marks on pieces of wood and date them. There's a lot of physical evidence, and you have to put this physical evidence together with the documentary evidence. And then later, if you have a gap and you don't know something between those two sources, you go to the prototypical. And we'll go take a look at some prototypical evidence.